Hi, this is Graphically Alex, coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today we're going to go ahead and continue the Angelyca video we were watching yesterday. I'm going to go ahead and link it below just in case people find this later, and I'll link this part to the other one, like I said, just in case people find it later. But we're going to go ahead and continue to talk about Aubrey Gordon and why I also don't like Aubrey Gordon, why I still don't like Aubrey Gordon either. So let's continue.
Someone says, as much as I'm against this movement and agree with these videos, this is one thing I disagree on. I mean, there's obviously something so deeply rooted in these people. Being someone who is as obese as a child, I understand how traumatic it is. I just want to say, I was never bullied for being fat either. Of course, I was like always overweight and chubby, but I wasn't like super humongous. And I also have a big giant fucking mouth, so best believe that people didn't fuck with me. Of course.
I also was never bullied growing up. I did have people try, but it never lasted. It never worked out for them. I'll put it to you that way. So, I don't know. I was just good at either fighting back, hiding, not making it easy, not reacting whatsoever, making it boring for them, etc., etc. I was good at stuff like that. So I didn't really have anything going on in that regard. Okay. The thing that I don't like is saying that it's traumatic to be fat in and of itself. I don't agree with that. I think that that's very exaggerated. I do think that trauma, it needs to be more of an event or more of a long-standing circumstance, something, just having a state of being, it's not enough, in my opinion, to be traumatic, especially like just being fat. It'd be like saying that because you weren't pretty or something, that it was traumatizing that you're not pretty. It's just too shallow, basically. It's not really real. I think that the reason why this comes up so much is because part of the toxic ritualistic is to deflect all issues towards the body. So this person may have had other issues or other things that were actually traumatic in their childhood, but they will talk about being fat because it's an easy topic. It's like a safe topic to talk about. And that's a huge aspect of the toxic ritualistic, which I used to see this all the time on Jubilee. It's why, for a lot of reasons, I don't really cover them anymore. But people would often use the opportunity of talking about their body to then talk about other opinions that were maybe spicier, or talk about totally irrelevant politics or totally irrelevant things that had nothing to do with it. And they would project a bunch of stuff onto it over and over and over again. And that's what I think this person is doing. I think it is something to say that being fat as a child isn't fun. It could have been miserable. It could have been uncomfortable. It could be unpleasant. All that kind of stuff. But it's not traumatic in and of itself. There'd have to be something else with it, is all I'm trying to say. It'd have to be like you were horrifically bullied for it. Or just whatever. I think you guys know what I'm saying. There has to be more to it. It is kind of ridiculous to say that. As somebody who was fat as a child, I was not traumatized by that. I was traumatized by other aspects that, like I said, I don't really want, I don't want to get into. But again, it was an actual event. It was actual stuff that happened as a kid. And then, basically there was more family issues. I'll put it to you that way, that were a problem. And that's when I think about what was traumatic as a child, it's that stuff. It's not being fat. If somebody's only trauma as a child was that they were fat, then honestly, they probably are just very spoiled or just had a really charmed life, basically. And they're just looking for something to be upset about in today's climate to try to fit in with everybody complaining, basically. That's my take.
Of course, this can vary, but it doesn't surprise me when people who grew up fat speak of trauma. Needing to depend on food emotionally is always an unpacking of something being very deeply wrong.
Okay, but then acknowledge that it's not about being fat. It's about something else. That's a huge step. That's one of the biggest aspects of recovery that needs to be talked about. It's not about your body. You know, a lot of stuff isn't. When it becomes a huge health issue, then yes, then it is about it. But it's kind of like a case of manifestation. If you keep doing the toxic ritualistic, you keep going into this binge, you keep doing it and doing it and doing it, then you will develop health issues. And then it is about your body. Then your body actually does become a problem, or then there actually is an issue. You kind of manifest it. You create it. You create a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. But in and of itself, usually when people are children, it's not really that much of a health issue at that stage. So it really isn't about your body. It's about other things going on in your life or other aspects, which again, I think we should start telling people that say things like this. You must not have had anything really going on in your childhood if that was traumatic for you. And that will probably prompt them to actually say what the issue was, because they'll say, no, that's not true. Okay, well, that other aspect is what was actually traumatic. Like, let's actually stick to the real topic here, you know? That's what bothers me about that kind of statement. And I just wouldn't feed into that at all, personally. If somebody said that to me, I'd be like, okay, I guess you had a really charmed life then. You know, which a lot of times it's just about getting people to understand that there's something else that happened. You know, people block it out or they try not to think about it. And that's why they go to that. It's not okay. It's toxically ritualistic. It's a part of what fuels cycles. You're trying to avoid things.
To begin with. I do, however, think once a person emerges into adulthood, then they're now aware and more control of their health. It's immediately up to them to change, and I don't think there's trauma to claim at this stage. But as a child, absolutely. When you're a kid and you have no clue what healthy would look like, and you're vulnerable and dependent, and are often shown disgust by family. Yeah. You know, children don't have control.
So shown disgust by family, I think that depends on the family. I think that it's, you know, there's a lot of families where everybody's big. For example, it might not be as othering in those types of situations. It might actually be more of an issue for somebody to be losing weight or downsizing, when their whole family is big, because then there might be a lot of toxic ritualistic reinforcement in a dynamic like that. That might actually be worse than everybody being the same kind of thing. Obviously, I've talked a lot about the heritability of the toxic ritualistic. I do think there's a genetic predisposition, but it does have to be socialized and activated. So socialized by somebody, typically it's your family. Within a heritability conversation, it would typically be like a parent. And then it has to be activated by trauma. So something has to actually happen, and no, being fat is not a trauma. Like, I'm going to keep saying that. That is not enough. That does not count. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. So it has to be something else, which again, people will constantly say that, but remember, it's a distraction. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again. I want you guys to get that.
Control over really anything. And, you know, I do put all blame on parents for having obese children, because you pick out the food that your kid eats. You make their plates. You choose to put them in activities or force them to go outside and play instead of being sedentary. But unfortunately, you know, since a majority of the population is overweight, 77% of the US population is overweight, 44% of them being obese, what kind of children do you think they're going to raise? Do you think they're going to raise like thin athletes?
That's a good point. So she made a good point there. What I will say is, it depends on the age. It's not always 100% within a parent's control. Kids sometimes do get food. kids sneak food, kids do things like that. I used to get food at school, for example, when I was like 13. There wasn't much that my mom could do about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of stuff can happen. Friends also share food. Like, there's stuff that goes on, you know. It's difficult to completely control. But under the age of 10, I would say probably, yeah, I think. And I think it's important to teach a child values and teach a child that taking care of your body is important and things like that. But I will continue to hone in on the point. If you have toxic ritualistic behaviors and mindsets as a parent, that's going to be a lot more damaging to a child than a lot of other stuff. Also, when it comes to children, they mimic. My mom tried her best to give me a healthy diet when I was young and to kind of do as I say, not as I do kind of thing, but it hardly ever works in practice. It works mentally, I guess, but not in reality. It ends up, you see what a parent is doing and you copy. It's very easy to copy. So all I'm saying is, I agree with Angelyca that parents are really important, but you have to deal with this issue yourself. You can't avoid recovery and just put it all on your kids. That happens a lot too. It puts a kid more at risk because you're still teaching them to have the issue. If you're obsessed with their weight or you're obsessed with these things and you're teaching them to be obsessed, it's still a problem. And all they need is some kind of trauma and it will activate. And it can be severe or moderate or whatever, you know, it can be whatever, but it will activate if you're setting that groundwork for that. So don't have it yourself. That's what's really important. And definitely I agree with Angelyca, like have healthy foods, do the right things, right? As a parent, support your child's nutrition, but also I do understand that there's not complete control after a certain point. So it can be tricky. And I think it's more about values and teaching a child that taking care of yourself as a value is important, which, you know, I'm not a parent. I don't have all the answers. I know that stuff is difficult, but everybody has to do the best they can. I don't think it's completely within control is all I'm trying to say. I think that's a little bit of a myth past a certain age, put to you that way.
Athletes that have fucking 6 servings of fruits and vegetables every single day is a very low chance. There's a statistic that says if a child has 1 obese parent, there's a 50% chance that they will become obese. If a child has 2 obese parents, that is an 80% chance that they will become obese. So until a parent heals their own relationship with food, until a parent is able to understand nutrition, have a somewhat consistent workout routine, be able to hydrate themselves regularly, there is almost like no way that a child is going to learn how to do that themselves.
I completely agree with her. And I think that doing those things yourself in a healthy, non-toxic, ritualistic way and modeling that for your kids is going to be so much more effective because you just teach them to do as you're doing. And that's so natural for kids. And that will fill in those gaps is all I'm trying to say. Or it'll set them up the best you can is by having it together yourself. So I totally agree with Angelyca. It totally is a big thing for parents to be okay. But you have to fix yourself. If you have a problem, you will probably, pull your child up as you pull yourself up in that kind of situation. And that does happen, where people get it together as a family and stuff. It's just easier for a kid to understand if that's what you're doing, That's my opinion.
Starts with the parents. And I'm not a parent yet. I'd like to have children within the next 5 years or so. So I don't understand how hard it is to be a parent, but being a parent is a choice. And I don't want to be a parent until I have healed a majority of my trauma or, my issues with food and exercise. And I do understand, as a formerly obese child, still obese adult, like, it does fucking suck that you have to undo all of the shitty stuff that happened to you as a child. It's not our fault we were obese kids, but it is our responsibility to reverse our obesity as adults because...
Well, and we need to break cycles. We're cycle breakers here on this channel. I don't spend much time entertaining hypotheticals of an imaginary childhood where, somebody wasn't fat, things like that. I don't think it's productive. I think it's often a weapon. Basically, it can be used as a weapon, can be used as a toxic ritualistic weapon. It's not productive. It's a waste of time. So we don't engage in that here. I don't ever talk about that kind of stuff because we need to keep it focused on the here and now and towards the future as much as possible, at least in terms of talking about these issues. I do understand that throughout the process, there is a reflection period. I had that in my tortured era last year where I thought about how long I was super morbidly obese and all these things. And I had to kind of grieve that, but also reach a point of acceptance and forgiveness, kind of. So it was a lot. Like, there is mental work in it, but I think a lot of those things can be more internal, basically. I don't know. I think it's like more internal work than like a societal burden that has to be put on everyone else. That's kind of my opinion about something like that. Obviously, sharing your journey or whatever is great, but I'm just saying, when people get into these hostile conversations with parents, or, you start to like get all nasty about stuff, it's not very productive, is all I'm trying to say. So think about that difference, right? Like, if you're pointing fingers at your parents and like getting in a huge fight with them over it, I don't think that that's productive. If you're reflecting, forgiving, letting go, moving past, that's extremely productive. That's very good. So there's a way to handle it, and there's a way not to handle it, in my opinion.
Because guess what? I do the grocery shopping. I'm the one that cooks and puts the food down my mouth and chews and swallows. So what are my parents going to do about that? Nothing. It's all on me. All right, so we have a local Portland person. I'm originally from Portland, and she is the epitome of that city. There's this very strange mentality in Portland. It's a very bland and white city. I think the lack of diversity actually really affects people. There's this mentality there that unless you're part of some minority, you don't get a voice. I'm a part of the queer community and notice that there's a huge overlap in fat acceptance and queerness in Portland. I went to Portland State University and actually had a professor that was teaching Hays. I was really upset about it. They continued their comment. People self-diagnose themselves all the time. I met so many people that claimed to be autistic and said that it was ableist to get a diagnosis. I was legally disabled and I worked really hard to make sure that I blended in with other people. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but I understand what it's like to be ostracized for having a disability. The victim mentality there is quite extreme. Someone replied, I think you're exactly right with the first point. Everyone is white and therefore they can't feel special without claiming to be a part of a minority group. Ex-queer and disabled groups. Being queer and or disabled is used to take away from their whiteness so they don't have to feel bad about themselves for their personalities of oatmeal, or if we're gonna get any deeper, their white guilt / racism. I've had friends that wanted to go because it's so LGBT friendly, but I had to remind them that none of us are white. The queer wouldn't have mattered because of that. We would have still been excluded. This is so real. I went to PSU and noticed that as well. In one of my women's studies class, there was a section of Hays stuff. That's really weird. In the women's study class, they were studying health at every size. I noticed that a lot of the students who are white use their marginalized identities to counteract their privileged ones, so they lead with that instead of being white able-bodied. And I feel like that's so true with so many people in the fat acceptance community. Like when I was reacting to my old videos or just fat acceptance compilations, there's people or there's videos that are like, I'm thinking about this one, it's like, I think she's like chubby and ginger, and she was talking about like white, cis, heterosexual, able-bodied white women. This person is saying, don't move or I'll off the underdogs of the body positivity movement. The skinny white women who co-opted the movement. The genuinely fat women, the women of color, the disabled women, the queer women, aka the marginalized people who founded the movement. I mean, I can't identify that person's sexuality by just looking at them or if they are disabled in any way, but it's like, okay, like, but you're a white woman. If you act like the white woman is the devil, then you are a devil, miss. All right, let's do this last comment.
So I think with that kind of stuff, I'm just going to add like the toxic ritualistic component. there's an idea within this that because I'm fat, I'm special or different. I'm not like everyone else, you know, which this kind of goes into the mid-sized princess energy too. I think that's kind of like one of the psychological underpinnings is this idea, like I see it all the time in a lot of Instagram reels and stuff of people who have lost weight. They're like, I'll never be like people who hadn't lost weight. I'll never be like somebody who was always thin. I'll never this, I'll never that. That kind of idea, it's rooted in the toxic ritualistic, which is kind of like the idea that because I'm fat, I'm so different that it's like I'm, you know, downtrodden and sad because I'm different for being fat, but I'm also special and somehow less superficial because I'm fat. So again, how does that work within the toxic ritualistic? It's this thing where people, they will imagine like the thin version of themselves and they'll be like, oh my gosh, like that thin version of myself, I'd have so much privilege over other fat people and I might lord it over them or something, or I might be a mean person. I don't know, like people have these weird, you have these weird thoughts within the toxic ritualistic because you pedestalize thinness. So it's like you envy it, but you also hate it at the same time. It's really, really up. It's really weird. And again, I think it just kind of, that whole conversation, it's just a lot of left-wing people that are caught up in this type of cycle. You know, maybe a left-winger would call it privilege. Maybe a right-winger would call it status. It's the same thing to different people, basically. And it's the same thing within the toxic ritualistic. So it's like, I might be at a higher status and that's, I don't know what I would do with that power or whatever, which is stupid. It's really dumb. I'm not telling you this because it's real. I'm telling you this because this is how people think and it's really stupid. And then a lot of times people will think of it as like a huge amount of sexual power and that they'll have over others and just these weird things that it's not even necessarily true, but it's just, you think about things weirdly like that. And all it's supposed to do is it's just trying to encourage you not to lose. Like I used to have these fears of like, oh my gosh, what if I become thin and then I'm like so mean and oh my gosh, da, da, da. And it's like, I was mean anyways. I was already mean, you know? And so that just doesn't make any sense. You know, it's like you play these types of games, but it all comes back to that kind of thing. And that's what I think that is touching upon, which, yeah, maybe that brings some clarity to people because they're probably like, what the hell? But that's where that's coming from. So I think it's like, well, if I have this fatness, then I'm deeper, I'm more special, and I'm also, you know, downtrodden. And because of that, like, I have a story now or whatever. It's very weird, but it is something that's very common. And I do think it does happen on the other end a lot too. So it is definitely a toxic ritualistic thing. It's something that people use where they use the condition of their body to garner sympathy on either end. It does happen. So that's where that comes from, because sympathy is kind of attention too. So it's also like a cry for attention. And it's people wanting that without having to actually do anything or accomplish anything. Which, that's very harsh, but that's the reality of it. So that's where I think all that is. So if we take the politics out of it, that's what that is. So I just had to try to explain that.
Comment, and then we'll get into my critique. I remember about 2 years ago, before I had ever heard of the fat acceptance movement or HAZE, I was listening to Maintenance Phase and I was very much on board with their messages until one time Aubrey Gordon said, we can't say that obese people are prone to diseases. We don't even know what diabetes even is. And then that's when the Kill Bill alarm bells rang in my head. I listened to that podcast and am appalled and suffered secondhand embarrassment whenever they define scientific concepts. I understand their social message, that's fair, and we're entitled to those, but they jack up biology all the time, and it's horrifying to think that people take their information as fact. I think I was watching this in one of Nadia Nim's old videos. Yeah. It was a video talking about like the maintenance phase podcast, and it was just so many people like fucking riding the dick of the maintenance phase podcast. Some of them literally being like, you need to show this podcast to your doctors. And it's like, you mean the doctors that have studied for like a decade to become a doctor? The ones that have actual experience working with clients and actual health and disorders and diseases? They need to listen to Aubrey Gordon and Michael Hobbs talk about how diabetes is fake. Yeah. Say that again. All right, so I posted this a couple days on...
My message on diabetes is exercise is very important. So, sedentary lifestyle, it's a complicating factor. It puts you at risk. That's my short message on diabetes.
My posts, is that what it's called? And it was like 3 hate comments. I guess I wouldn't even say they're whatever. The first comment I shared was, I don't agree with a lot of your takes. Pointing out how huge she is ugly. Saying that she should lose weight to be treated better is just as nasty. Yes, a heavy body is more prone to medical risks, but that doesn't make her less worth of respect. I don't respect her less because she's fat. I respect her less because of the stupid shit she says. I hope you focus more on education through kindness from now on, because this isn't it. I mean, I do like to put some sort of education every once in a while. That's mostly just me sharing statistics, but kindness is not what you're gonna get from me, baby girl.
Okay, so what I think, somebody who is not a part of the toxic ritualistic, I think the best way to handle people who are is to not ever reinforce, look at it very blankly and just logically, and just, if they're like, oh my gosh, how could you say that? Don't care. Just be like, I'm not going to play this game with you, basically. You don't have to literally say that, but just think that and just be like, no, I'm going to stay in touch with reality and I'm not going to reaffirm your delulus. Because I think that's the best thing, because there have been certain times in my journey where I've thankfully had the perspective of people who have never had these issues, and they could kind of like snap me back a little bit, or like, you know, remind me of like reality. I don't know. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but there's just a lot of phases, especially losing from such a big size. There are times where it's like really difficult, or you don't know what's happening. You know, like there's all these doubts and stuff throughout a journey like this. And it helps. It just helps. I don't know how to say it. Like, an example of this is when I was in my tortured phase, I guess recovering the tortured era, which was about a year ago. I think I have to keep observing, but I've observed in some people and in myself too, that when you get to morbid obesity, a lot of people have a major plateau at that stage. And it's long and it's stubborn. I do wonder if anybody else had that. Like, it's interesting to think about, I guess, or like, I wonder if there's some kind of a phenomenon, but I had a really terrible plateau when I was super morbid. And I was sitting here like listening to Aubrey Gordon the whole time. And it's like, I was having doubts. I was kind of tortured, you know, and obviously as an activist and stuff, I'm like, of course I'm going to do this. Of course. But then I think even with you guys, like in some of my health updates, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, like I think I was still kind of real at moments, because I'm like, I know that I'm counting and stuff, and I know that it will happen, but it's not happening and it's freaking me out. And I think a lot of times people that have never had these issues, or people have never been very big, they don't understand that a lot of times when you're that big, it's like you're going through a tunnel and you don't see the light, and you're just like, oh my God, what is going on? And so I'm sitting here like reacting to Aubrey constantly, but during that time, and I'm like starting to like hate her. You know, I started to resent her a lot, because it's like I'm struggling with doubts myself, and then she's constantly affirming delusions or trying to. But luckily at the time I was talking a lot to David, if you guys remember, not David. And he is somebody who has just not had that perspective ever. And it's like, I was watching him a lot too. And it's like, it can be helpful. So it's like, just be blatant, or just state truth, because that totally like opposite experience or view or whatever you want to call it that David has had from what I had, it kept me in reality. And I'm like, yes, I know that this is right. And it was. And then I kept losing. And then everyone, not everyone, but then a lot of people were getting surprised, because then I was the albatross, towards August. And then I had some issues on my channel where people were weirded out that I was actually becoming like a small fat butterball. That's what I call it. I was becoming a little Tracy Turnblad, a cute little small fat on this channel. And people were like, whoa, what is actually happening? And it's like, hello. And then I remember being mad at the time. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, everybody wants to be about anti-fat acceptance until it's time. I'm like, I actually meant it, you guys. And it pissed me off. Sorry, not me reminiscing about August, but now I look back at it and I laugh. But I had to deal with that whole like trigger of like, you can't control how other people see you. And it was like, that was like the last piece of my tortured era and dealing with that final trigger, because I dealt with so many triggers during that time. And that was the final one where it's like, you can't control how other people see you, Alex. So cope with it without the toxic ritualistic. Cope with it. And I did. And I was like, but I was so mad. I was mad.
I think it is fine to point out how huge she is, because her whole brand is about being fat. And if she's proud to be fat, why can't I point out that she's fat? It's literally just the truth. She is fucking huge. And we have become so numb to obesity. So when we see people like Aubrey Gordon talk about how people can be healthy at every size, how she talks about that there are no respecters to being fat, how she talks about scientists haven't found a way for fat people to become thin, I think it's important to point out how fucking large she is, because there is a lot of bias behind everything that she says. And she has talked about openly in this documentary, I haven't read every single one of her blog posts or Instagrams, but she has talked openly about how she struggles with eating and her mental health and food, which contradicts her statements talking about, that it's just some fucking scientific miracle that people are fat.
Yes.
And I think because as a society...
And therefore that they lose. Which, by the way, I did have a Clara Bow moment in my tortured era. You guys that don't know what the hell I'm talking about, you're probably like, what the hell? But I have eras. And I had a Clara Bow moment for the Swifties, because I was like, promise to be dazzling, Alex. Like, when you finish losing the weight, like, you have to promise to be dazzling. And I was like, okay. It's really cheesy, but because they really, like, she really made me feel like I was walking on water. Like, I'm just crazy. I probably shouldn't have been listening to her maybe while I was struggling, but I did. And like I said, it made me mad. That's why I'm probably never going to forget her. I never forget a face. Remember, I'm still a mid-sized princess. I don't. And I'm still mad about it, honestly, if I think about it too deeply. Because it makes me mad for me. Like, I will be honest, I'm not going to act like I'm on the Fab Fatties and be like, it's about everyone else all the time. It pisses me off for me. But it also pisses me off for everyone that she's poisoned with this stuff. Like, how many people have gotten to a morbid obese state and been convinced by Aubrey that they should give up and go back up to SMO? How many times has she done that? It's horrible. It didn't work on me.
So numb to obesity. 77% of the population is overweight. We don't think anything of it. I'm still overweight. Of course, I'm trying to fucking lose weight. You can only lose weight so quick. But I just have so much less empathy for her and other celebrities in the fat acceptance sphere because I am resentful. I feel like this is going to be me having a fucking therapy session with YouTube right now. But it's like, because of content creators like Aubrey Gordon and models like Tess Holliday that promote health at every size, and how everything is just so extreme nowadays, you're either severely obese or you're stick thin and have Anna. Like, there's no in between. And to a certain point, I feel guilty for posting all of the fat acceptance content I did on TikTok and Instagram. So in a way, like, I almost hope that me posting these videos kind of like undoes what I did. I mean,
it does. In my opinion, it does. Absolutely. So it totally helps. Thank you, Angelyca. That's all.
I know I was never like really like a huge influencer or anything. I think on TikTok I maybe had like 60,000, but I still have people commenting on my videos like, oh yeah, I remember when you used to be in the fat acceptance community, or I used to follow you back then. So I feel bad for pushing those messages, and I believed in the fat acceptance rhetoric for so long because of fat acceptance celebrities like Aubrey Gordon or Tess Holliday, and because of content like Fearing the Black Body or Virgi Tovar, you have the right to remain fat. I'll take the blame for falling for the bullshit, and it is my responsibility to undo and lose all of the weight that I fucking put on. But I can't help but be more harsh towards the big players in these games. The people.
And they don't like the fact that the toxic poison that they put out there, it does breed resentment. It does. And I've been very honest about that on my channel. A lot of people they're like, oh my gosh, if you say stuff like that, but it's like, I've been very emotionally honest throughout this journey. I think it's important because I want people to not feel totally crazy if they have a lot of emotions on this journey, because it's not crazy. It is a lot. And, as much as I had personal life enemies, I also had rhetorical enemies too. And again, it stings. 2023, and especially the first half of 2024, before I got to the small fat zone, it was hard. It was really hard. And to constantly be hearing these voices and fighting them, like, obviously I was just like I felt like I was fighting everything like hell, and I was just going for it. But it's like, it did build up a lot of resentment. And like I told you guys, I do have a special amount of resentment towards Aubrey because she's particularly bad. It's really bad. And, it's such a transformative process to downsize from such a huge place that you remember things more. I don't know how to describe it. And I think because it's difficult, you remember things more and you have resentment at times. So I just kind of let it out though. I don't like bury it or anything, because I won't give them that credit whatsoever, because I'm not ever going to shield Aubrey Gordon from how I feel, and even Aubrey trying to go after Angelyca with the strike and all that, it just pissed me off again. And so it's like, oh, honey, she's not going to silence me. I will have something to say in January, Aubrey. And I will do it in a way that you cannot get me. You can't. So I'm just saying, I really don't like her, So many of you guys commented on today's video, and you were like, she was like untouchable. And I'm like, I know. Why? It's weird.
That are still convincing others that all these toxic behaviors are normal and okay, because whether they like it or not, there is an obesity epidemic, and being obese is extremely harmful and dangerous. Someone just rode their bike and was playing that one Kendrick Lamar song where he was dissing Drake. That feels very fitting. And I probably was mean and cruel about Aubrey at some points in that documentary, and I'm someone that is very sarcastic, and the older I get, the more blunt I become, but I'm not someone that's soft-spoken, and I'm sure what I say sometimes sounds rude and mean. You know, I love content creators like Sam at Every Size and Megan Ann. I feel like they are two content creators that emotionally held my hand while I was escaping the fat acceptance community, and they helped me undo the thoughts and helped me realize the bullshit that people in the fat acceptance community said. And I still watch all of their videos. I think that their channels and their videos like literally saves and changes lives, but I'm not them. Quite frankly, I'm a fucking bitch, and I'm gonna say what I feel and what I see.
I think if you go into anti-FA, you have to just be you, because it's not, it's so great to have a diversity of approaches. You know, I do think that Megan Ann and Sam at Every Size are great. They're very great. They're very like, they're more like of the soft variety, I guess. And then you have like really hard varieties like Alan Roberts, for example. I've always considered myself in the middle, which is where I want to be, basically, but it's also how I am. I can understand emotional things, but I also, you know, honey, we need to get it done. You know what I'm saying? I also have a perspective of it needs to get done. And if it upsets people, I don't care. You know, I don't care if my mid-phase triggered somebody. I don't care if people were like, oh my gosh, you're becoming small fat. What do I do about it?
And Aubrey Gordon did look fucking humongous, and she blamed it on just about every person and everything in the entire world except for herself. I know I said earlier in the video I'm a little bit bootstrappy, but it's like the Kendrick Lamar guy just fucking drove by again. Bop, 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 bop. But it's like, okay, if your life fucking sucks so bad, what are you gonna do about it? And when I was in the fat acceptance community and I was following Aubrey Gordon and, you know, all the big content creators, it made me feel so helpless and hopeless about my life and my weight and my confidence and how I viewed myself that I feel so bitter and resentful towards them because I believed the bullshit that they said for so long. Of course, I'll take fault that I believed in all that shit, but it just pisses me off knowing that people are still following her like it is the gospel. People are telling their doctors, they're licensed practitioners who probably have, I guess depending on how old your fucking doctor is, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experience to listen to the Maintenance Phase podcast. And of course, I don't think you need to be a doctor to talk about science and read research because the internet's free and we all have access to that. But to just constantly misquote and twist shit to fit your own narrative just makes me beyond pissed. And knowing that there are still so many people that worship her in the words of people in the fat acceptance community makes me feel outrageous because I just never want people to feel the way that I did. I do not want people to feel like they are stuck when they are pushing 300 pounds. I do not want people to have to jiggle their fat fucking belly on TikTok and laugh at themselves so they feel a little bit of dopamine or make jokes about themselves and their weight first in hopes that no one else makes fun of them. These two comments are from...
I think for me, it's a lot about hopelessness and it's a lot about what's possible or not. I want somebody to know that they're choosing to be that size. That's what I want. And within that choice, there is power. And within that reality, there is clarity. And I think that that's what's really, really important to me because I try to tell you guys, although I was never in the movement for so many years, I did not believe it was possible to downsize or to lose weight. I didn't believe it. I didn't. And people, some of you guys have heard me say that in like a video and you're like, oh my gosh, really? Or like, what? And it's like, yeah, I didn't believe it was possible. I just thought it could never happen. It could never happen for me. Again, I'm really touching on the Tortured Era today, but, which it has to do with the Tortured Poets album because I'm gay and I like to do cheesy like album eras with different phases of weight loss, but it's that prophecy concept of like, let it once be me. Can I change the prophecy? You know, who do I have to speak to change the prophecy? Like, who do I have to speak to change this horrific destiny that I feel like I have, even though it isn't real? But I was feeling that way so much when I was morbid. I was like, can it be me? Like, will it be me? Can I get out? Can I do this? And it's really difficult. And so I would often keep that in mind or keep that person in mind as I was losing publicly and stuff. And I'm like, that's why I'm doing it publicly, because I know it's possible and I know this and I know that, but it's still something I had to go through myself too. And I understand that when it happens in another person now. And it's like, I want to be a voice saying, yes, it can be you. It can be you. You can get out. Because it's really hard. It's a hard stage, honestly, of the journey, but that's a very difficult aspect of the journey, is believing it's possible, believing you can get out. It's really hard. And I'm here to be like, yes, you can. Even if I'm a bit bitchy when I say it, I'm going to be a bit bitchy for some and a bit soft for others. It just depends on the person who's hearing me, I guess, because I consider myself very midline on that.
The same person. Someone said, why did you watch this? It has nothing to do with politics. Which, I don't talk about politics on my channel. If anything, I've said multiple times that I'm not very well educated in politics. And keep referring to her size as humongous is so disrespectful. I don't think there's anything disrespectful about stating the truth. If you put in the comment section, oh, I can see your fucking zits on your face, I'd be like, well, yeah, I have fucking zits on my face because I'm gonna get my period soon, bitch. And then they said, I mean, 200 pounds? That sounds humongous to me. Because I mentioned in my video,
I saw
when we were
this
talking
on
about,
one of her posts. I did. I saw it. It was funny. I laughed. I know that's bad, but I did laugh. I thought it was funny.
Pressure cuffs, I measured my thigh.
But your reaction was funny too.
The same length basically as a fucking extra large blood pressure, to like kind of put in perspective how big it is, because Aubrey Gordon is making them sound like they're all fucking 14 inches long. She's like, and 200 pounds? That sounds humongous to me. Okay, well, if I'm fucking humongous, then what is Aubrey Gordon?
Yeah.
I mean, I know.
It doesn't work. It's not a good logical statement, which it irritates people. That's funny. I don't know. People are so... I just cannot imagine rushing to the defense of Aubrey Gordon. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I just can't imagine it.
No, humongous is not maybe the nicest adjective to describe someone, but that's just who I am. You're not going to change me. Same person says, oh, I see by scrolling you used to be much bigger. How's Ozempic treating you? And now people in the fat acceptance community are using Ozempic and GLP-1s as some sort of insult.
A weapon. It's a toxic ritualistic weapon as well. I wonder if this person has issues, because that's odd. Put to you that way. That is odd. It's a little bit of a... I'm like, it's weird.
When they should be happy that medications exist, since they love talking about healthcare. And just to clarify, in case you care, I'm not on a GLP-1 medication. I would let you guys know if I was on one, but quite frankly, I'm too cheap. So I'm just in a calorie deficit. And I take extra long walks on my walking pad so I can eat peanut butter M&Ms while I play Marvel Rivals at night. And then I posted that, and someone said, oh yeah, the humongous part was kind of rude. Someone replied, the person who the documentary is about makes the point about how big she is, how fat she is in comparison to her friends, etc. In my opinion, if you're going to make a point to discuss how big you are, then people have the right to also comment on the fact. It's a fact, though. She's huge. Yeah, the woman in the doc calls herself fat, not humongous. I don't think it's necessary at all. Just say, wow, she looks bigger in the clip than I thought she would.
It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I think that people can... I think if Angelyca had said, she's disgusting, or she should be ashamed of herself, like things like that, that's where I'd be like, I'd be like, Angelyca, like that's... But my reasons would be because it's reinforcement. It reinforces a shame cycle, or a cycle within the toxic ritualistic. If it worked, I wouldn't care. A lot of people are like, it does work, did it? And I'm like, it doesn't. It would not work for Aubrey. I do not think it works for super morbid people. I just don't. The type of person who it might work for is like a mid-sized person, maybe class 1, somebody that doesn't have a toxic ritualistic past, etc., etc. Then it might work. It's like, oh, you're lazy, that type of thing. It might work for them. But you can't, like, just do that blanket. Like, you have to know a person's history and stuff like that. So I wouldn't suggest doing that like online or whatever necessarily. But, you know, that's just me. I'm not going to like police if other people do that stuff because maybe it works for other people, you know. And like, I am a believer in the right person finds the right message. So it's nuanced. I can see both sides. I think especially as I'm mid, I can see both sides still. But yeah, in general, I just I wouldn't shame. I don't think it works, personally.
Was or something besides using mocking language. That
she wasn't doing that.
Part of why
saying that she's humongous or saying that she's big or whatever, that's just stating a fact, basically. I don't see it as that big of a deal. It's not necessarily a value judgment. It's like just an observation, which I just don't even see the problem. Like Angelyca said, maybe it is blunt, but it's not a value judgment. You know? If she was like, she's disgusting, that would be a value judgment. That's different. Which I know to a lot of people, they'd be like, what? How is that different? It just is. It is. It's very different. Or if the other thing is be like if Angelyca was pointing out specific parts of her body and being like, look at that, look at how this looks, and like I don't even want to say it because people will get it, like it's upsetting. But if she was like picking apart different aspects of her body or something, I would not support that. I don't think that's good. I think that that's triggering. So there's a way to where it is an issue, but just saying humongous is not, I don't think it's enough. It's just reality. Like we have to be able to talk about things again, even if it's very direct, it's just reality. And so I'm trying to give my advice or my opinion on different things that would be worse or bad or reinforcing. I don't think that necessarily is. It's just stating fact.
Thinks they call themselves oppressed. Yeah, I've never been subscribed to Fat Acceptance. Big supporter of Angelyca, but that did catch me off guard each time. Maybe a little rude, but entirely accurate and often funny.
That's funny.
Well, in Aubrey's documentary, she said, just say fat. And she said, don't say fluffy, chubby, big boned, big guy. She didn't say I couldn't say humongous. Oh my fucking god. I
Not me laughing.
Myself. I'm gonna be real, the saying she's fucking huge and humongous every minute did skeeve me out a bit. Not saying this because I'm a fat activist snowflake, but because I feel the current conversation about weight online has turned very nasty and vindictive. It's quite disquieting. I've never heard of that word before. You guys have such better vocabulary than I do. You know, if I was talking about literally anyone else, I would be more sensitive, but
it's guys, personal.
I watched this documentary once when I was filming a reaction for my members only. I watched it again when I was taking notes, and then I watched it a third time when I was reviewing my notes to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And then I watched it again when I edited my 3 reactions, and then another probably 2 or 3 times when I edited my summary video. I watched that documentary almost 10 fucking times. I cannot stand the lady at this point. I know.
You're such a poor thing. I know I'm gonna have to go in deep. You're freaking me out, Angelyca. I know I'm gonna have to go in deep when I watch it. But it's gonna be... I'm gonna be in hell this January when I do that. I know it's gonna be hard, but it has to be done. And now it really has to, because she pissed me off. Aubrey pissed me off with this whole thing. So now I really gotta do it. So, because again... I never forget a face, Aubrey. I never forget. Never gonna forget you. Sorry, that's a horrible pause face, Angelyca.
Know everything about this woman. If I were to talk about just some random other person in the fat acceptance movement on TikTok that has a microscopic following, I would not nearly be as harsh. But this person is a fat acceptance celebrity who makes probably hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And let's also be real too. She's a full-on activist and she's highly political with this stuff. she's an activist, full on. She's established. She has money behind her. She has a lot of stuff going on behind her. So she is like a big deal from an activistic perspective. I don't really want to say political because, again, I don't want to give her that credit. I don't think it's a political thing. But she is highly activistic. Serious activism. Like, she's no Fab Fatties where they are terrible activists that will never get anything done or that get barely anything done. Aubrey is the real deal. So it's like, let's not shield very aggressive, horrific activism from criticism, which is exactly what Aubrey's trying to do with using like legal stuff. It's horrible. So let's keep that in mind. Aubrey is not a victim at all.
If not, I could say millions of dollars on being fat. Who pushes that you can be healthy at every size, that there is no scientific reasoning that people are fat, and that 95% of diets fail, and that it's genetics to be fat. I'm sorry, I cannot find my sympathy bone at this point. And this person says, I agree. It honestly has to do a lot with self-hatred or hating who you used to be. I'm aware that this is her unfiltered views. She can say whatever she wants, but her constantly commenting on how bad she looks with this type of language reminds me of my own inner thoughts. I guess I agree to a point. I don't think I was ever that mean to myself. I think I'm just so fucking annoyed with Aubrey Gordon because I've spent so many hours of my life.
It's probably more personal, which is, I mean, it's realistic, you know? Again, people are going to have strong emotions against certain fat activists, you know? I would never advocate for, like, you know, doing any harm or anything like that. But as far as, like, criticizing, it's coming. It's coming to you. As far as being a gnat in their ear or like annoying the shit out of them, yeah, you know, it's coming to you. Sorry, like, and sometimes there are emotions within activism too, and that's just a thing. But I do not like Aubrey Gordon either. I don't. I really don't. I get it.
Life listening to her. I will say
I listen to her a lot too. The more you listen to her, the more you don't like her. That's all I can say. There must be a correlation. I don't want to know how many hours I have listened to, discussed, watched, edited, etc. things that Aubrey Gordon has said. I don't even want to know at this point. I don't want to know. But all I can say is I've done a lot. And it's horrifying. Like, it's like cumulative. I don't know how to describe it. I just don't. So I get it. That's kind of an activist thing. I get it. You know, we take on this mantle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes things are going to slip through. And it is what it is. And I don't think it's that bad to say that she's humongous. I just don't. I don't think it's that bad. I told you what I think would have been bad. But I think a lot of times people that have these issues or people that are toxically ritualistic, they are very upset about anybody being serious about actually getting over it. It upsets them or it scares them. And that's not necessarily like always a bad thing, but it's like, as activists, we have to be aware, like, sometimes people that have these issues, they are overly sensitive, and it's just a reality. I don't know what else to say. Pointing out that somebody is very big when they are very big, if that bothers you, you need to kind of calm down. And again, she's even saying, well, that sounds like my own internal conversation. Well, this isn't your internal conversation, though. This is somebody else. So while I do think there are some aspects where it could be reinforcing, I don't think that this counts. I think you have to put more into it. And I think that it's on you as somebody in recovery to not be triggered by the general population that doesn't have these issues. So I hope that was clear.
I don't love my body. I'm okay with my body. There needs to do a lot more improvements on my body, but I'm not hyper-focused on my body, thinking about it 24/7 like Aubrey Gordon. And I do think it's important to point out actually how big she is and how much her weight impacts her life because she chooses to talk about how horrible society
Yes.
treats her when she treats herself like worship. I'm 145 pounds down now from 195, and because I hated my body so much then when I was bigger, I instantly noticed the tiny things in bigger strangers, and quite honestly, I think badly about them in my head. And I did say, you know, like, seeing her stomach hang out kind of triggered me as well, because at one point my dad was 450 pounds, so seeing that kind of unleashed something from my past. But I'm sorry, like, weight and fatness has been such a big part of my life, and I don't have a filter, hence Angelyca Unfiltered.
Okay.
So
Well, if you did point something like that out, I would not suggest that. That's all I can say. I'm not going to sit here and like, oh my gosh, Angelica's horrible. Like, I'm not going to do all that. It's just a suggestion. That's all. I think calling out specific parts and stuff, that is reinforcing a little bit. I'm going to be real. But just a general statement, especially value neutral, like big, huge, etc., it's not as bad. I don't think it's bad. So, anyways, that's my opinion. Take it for what it is. Again, I'm not, it's just, yeah, I'm just explaining it.
that's why I am so blunt in the reasons that I say the things that I do. Weight and fatness and the overconsumption of food has ruled my life for so long that I have very bold opinions, and no matter how much weight I lose, I will always have a big fat mouth. I realize this isn't normal behavior, but I feel like for many people who have lost this type of weight, but it's not easy to see in others what we used to look like and find it gratifying at that point. I don't find it gratifying to see people still fat, or I don't feel like a accomplishment when I see fat people. It just pisses me off, but it also makes me sad that people feel so helpless in the position that they're in. I mean, I already said this earlier, but like, when I was in the fat acceptance movement, I felt so helpless and hopeless about the position I was in. I do find it upsetting to see people in that same position because I'm on the other side. I made it out. I know the truth. I realize that calories in, calories out is real. Of course, there are certain disorders and diseases that make it harder to lose weight, but seeing people not take any sort of responsibility for the way that they are still pisses me off, even though that is something that I have struggled with for probably a majority of my life. They are like physical.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I think you have to be careful with this because there can be that toxic ritualistic comparison aspect, which I have talked a lot about. I think it comes up in the mids a lot too. I've had to really deal with some residual stuff this year because part of it is you get so used to comparing yourself to other people, especially within BINGE. I think it might be the case in others as well, but you tend to compare yourself to bigger people a lot. Well, I'm not as big as them, or, oh no, I'm bigger than them. You know, it's that kind of thing all the time. You scan every room, you do all that kind of thing. It's hard to stop that. And I just kind of try to point it out because if that is something coming up, like, realize that's still rooted in that and you need to stop. You need to individuate your body because it just is not a firm foundation for your progress. And you always need to protect your progress. So don't get too caught up in that. I know it's not possible to never compare, but just don't feed into it is my advice. So, yeah. Individuate.
Reminders of a stepping stone we've left in the past, but making fun of them is like making fun of your old, bigger self. I'm probably just projecting, but that's at least how I view it. I mean, I've already made fun of myself so much on this channel. Yeah. You've seen me go through and review all of my old fat acceptance content.
Yeah, I think some people are just not as serious as others, like, all the time. And I don't mean serious, like, in terms of activism or whatever. I just mean serious, like, some people crack jokes. Some people like to laugh or whatever, or have fun, or this type of stuff. And it's like, it's okay, you know? And if it's not for you, that's also okay. It's fine, you know? It's fine. So I think it's fine either way.
And critique myself. It's just knowing that there's a way out kind of upsets me, seeing people in the fat acceptance movement.
I feel that way. I feel survivor's guilt about supermorbid obesity. It's not as bad now, but it was another one of my tortured aspects during my morbid obese era. It was hard. because I was like, oh my gosh, like I survived. And it was hard to reckon with that because I did feel that kind of like, why me kind of thing. It was hard. But again, I don't really have that many suggestions. I became a whole ass activist about it, and that is how I felt better about it. So, I mean, that's not going to be the answer for everybody. It's kind of crazy, but, you know, in the case of, oh my God, I have the worst pause phases. I'm so sorry.
Would not be nearly.
In the case, whatever, that's not much better. In the case of Angelyca, she is doing this work. So that should alleviate that. I can give you that advice personally.
As harsh to other random fat acceptance creators on TikTok.
She's doing enough. You guys, viewers, she's doing enough. Okay, it's fine. She's doing enough.
Aubrey has built a huge platform. She's built multiple businesses about why it is fine to be fat and why you, her, everyone else in the whole world are meant to be fat when it's quite literally wrong. But almost like everyone else was pretty nice in that comment section of that post. Or standing up for me, because you guys are all unfiltered divas like me. Let me know if you have more opinions about the Your Fat Friend documentary that you didn't leave in the comment section of that last video. I'd love to hear. I'm probably not going to make videos addressing critique of every single video I make because that'd be boring and completely unnecessary for my mental health. So I don't hate Aubrey Gordon as a person. I have a lot of critique.
No, I'm just kidding.
About her and the things that she says. I mean, in real life, I feel like I'd probably get along with her. I feel like we probably have a lot of the same values, but I disagree, or I do not like the persona that she puts.
I think for me, I really don't like her, and I just think I have an issue with her in general. I told you guys why. I think she's just very controlling, and I don't like people like that. It bothers me a lot. And so I think that would bother me. I think I'd feel like I'd have to walk on eggshells around her all the time. And I don't want to talk to somebody like that. I just don't. It's too confining. So, you know, obviously, like, I try to keep it as professional as I can, like, when I'm doing activism and whatnot. But, like, in my private life, like, I like to be a messy queen. And even sometimes on here, like, you guys have seen it plenty. You know, it's like, I like that kind of thing. And I like offensive humor. I like just having fun with stuff like that. So it's like, I don't think I'd get along with Aubrey. Like, I just see her as like very controlling. You know, I don't have a similar sense of humor that she does. Like, there were so many times where I would listen to the maintenance phase and they're like laughing and I'm like not laughing at all. Like, I don't find it funny. Like, I think that I just don't like her, you know. I will say it. I just don't. I just don't. I'm sorry, I don't.
Online for everyone. And I still hope and pray that one day that she...
Yeah. I would still be happy for her if she got out. I would celebrate it. I would just be thrilled. And I would also tell her, you need to do reverse activism, though. So I would be so happy for her, but I'd also be like, you know, I would forgive her if she did change her heart and, like, actually undid some of the damage that she's done. Then I would absolutely forgive her in a heartbeat. And I think that that's important for people to understand. Like, even though I could never see myself being friends with Aubrey, I would still celebrate her recovery and be so happy for her and happy for whatever work she'd be doing to reverse what she's done. So I think that that's really important to also state. So, yeah, I would be absolutely thrilled if she got better.
It's her mental health under control.
I would talk about it all the time. I definitely would. I'd be like, holy crap, she actually woke up. And we would talk about it, you know, instantly. So, yeah, I hope so, but I don't have much faith, I'll put it to you that way.
And she is able to heal her trauma and her disordered eating so she can live a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life. But I don't think that'll ever happen because her whole life, personality, and businesses are all based around the fact that she's fat.
Yeah, she's in it very deep.
There's this video I saw on Instagram yesterday. I think you guys might like it.
Jesus never said you couldn't have enemies. He just said to love them. And I do love my enemies. And that's why I pray on their downfalls. Because the success that they have had has made them horrible human beings. Success has not been good for them. So I would like to see them go on a journey of failure, which would lead them to humility, which would allow them to grow closer to the Lord, which they desperately need to do.
Thank you so much for watching.
That's funny. I think that I think for me, it's, as much as I don't really like Aubrey at all, it's mostly activistic. It's mostly rhetorical. You know, I would never feel the need to just bash her as a person. I just think she's not my cup of tea, which is not a big deal. I'm very introverted. You guys know, like, you know, I don't know. It shouldn't be shocking if I don't just automatically love everybody all the time. But yeah, I think regardless, I think I don't even know. I just want it to stop. So she's my op. I told you guys she is, but she's in a better position than me, and I can see it, and it makes me mad, and I will work to change that over the years. I will work. I don't like what she did to Angelyca. Pisses me off. I don't like it. So, anyways, I guess that ends this. Apparently, I hate Aubrey more. I won the competition with Angelyca for who doesn't like Aubrey most. But I will talk to you guys later, so have a good one. I hope you guys enjoyed these. You guys definitely enjoyed it today, but I hope that you guys have a good one, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.